The last two videos did not reach 3,000 likes, so I hope this video reaches 3,000 likes. And thanks to everyone who supported the channel. The bodyguard said, "So, Black Scythe, would you like me to share some information about the 7th round?" Ryu asked, "How do you know about the 7th round?" He replied, "I heard about it from a real-world prophet." Ryu furrowed his brow and said to himself, "Last time they concealed it. Now, he's openly talking about the prophet like this. Had I been naive to think I could trust them?" With this thought in mind, Ryu stared at the bodyguard. Stumbling over his words, the bodyguard inquired, Why are you looking at me like that?" Ryu replied, "No, but you mentioned prophet. It sounds absurd." The bodyguard said, "It's true. I have a friend who's a prophet. I've already received their help several times. Isn't that right, Seo Arin?" she said. "Oh yes," Ryu said to himself. Seo Arin too? And now one more person who couldn't be trusted had been added to the mix. Aged man no gay asked, with a puzzled expression, "Hey, what are you two talking about, a prophet?" But Minjuri remained silent. She seems quite surprised internally. She seems to doubt that the prophet she thought only she knew about might be Ryu Min. Ryu Min sighed inwardly as he observed their reactions, and said to himself, the situation had become quite troublesome, and he wanted to silence the bodyguard immediately, but he didn't have a good reason to do so. Then the bodyguard said, "Black Scythe, I'll tell you about the 7th round information. I'll tell you without any cost. How about that? Will you listen?" After some contemplation, Ryu finally nodded and said, "All right. I'm not sure if it's trustworthy, but I'll listen for now. We're in a situation where we have to catch even a straw," he said confidently. "Don't worry, the prophecy has never been wrong." With that said, and the bodyguard conveyed the prophecy he had received. As the prophet said, "Don't be tempted. Just remember this when tackling the 7th round." Aged man, no gay, asked, "What are you talking about? Temptation?" But the bodyguard simply nodded quietly and said, "I don't know the details." At that moment, Minjuri, with a bewildered expression, approached and said, Excuse me, Ansang Cheol, is the person you mentioned as a prophet named Ryu Min?" This time, the bodyguard was the one taken aback. Seo Arin was the same. Aged man no gay, who didn't understand the situation, alternately looked at the two of them. Ryu, who had witnessed the entire situation, sighed inwardly, said to himself, "Ugh, damn it, but it shouldn't be a problem as long as my identity as the Black Scythe isn't revealed. And for now, it might be better to scatter the four of them in different directions." Then he said to them, "If the prophet's words come true, don't be tempted. It might not be a bad idea to remember that for now." And he added, "For now it's best to split up and gather more detailed information." The bodyguard inquired, "Split up, you say?" Ryu replied, "As we move around, we might come across new quests or information." He asked, "But why do we have to do that when we don't even know if it's a party quest?" Ryu stared at him coldly upon hearing these words. The bodyguard swallowed his irritation at the cold tone. In fact, there was no way Ryu would look favorably upon him for causing trouble. Then the bodyguard said, Okay, I understand. Let's handle the 7th round individually then. Black Scythe, good luck. See you next time." After bowing their heads, the bodyguard and Seo Arin disappeared. Aged man no gay also hesitated for a moment, and then awkwardly bowed his head and said, "I'll go." Now only Minjuri remained by Ryu's side. Then Ryu said to her, "You can go too." She said, "Oh, I see. Okay then." Although she seemed reluctant to part, Minjuri eventually left. Alone, Ryu heaved a sigh and said, "This situation has become quite troublesome." As he pondered for about 5 minutes, he suddenly heard a sharp scream piercing through the air. Rao wasted no time, sprinting toward the direction from which the piercing scream had echoed. But what he encountered there was nothing short of shocking, and he inquired in amazement, "Me? Minjuri?" With an unusual fervor in his expression, Ryu hurried over to her and said, "Democracy! What in the world happened?" She struggled to speak, her voice trembling. "Be Black Scythe. No, Min, please, help me." Ryu was taken aback and asked himself, "She knows about my true identity?" How had this revelation come about? He hadn't detected even the slightest hint of this when he delved into her thoughts. As her pupils quivered, Minjuri continued in a feeble voice, Ryu Min, you're Ryu Min, right?" Ryu said to himself in shock. "My true identity, how did you find out?" She added, "Of course, you know, don't you? Why pretend? No, you're my love. No matter how hard you tried to conceal it, it was painfully obvious." Ryu inquired. So, you've known all along and pretended otherwise? Minjuri nodded and said, I knew. Pretending all this time was unbearable, Ryu said. Setting that aside, what happened to you? Who did this to you? Tell me. Her injuries appeared grave, with the imminent risk of losing her life. And in his momentary panic, Ryu had failed to employ his healing abilities immediately. And with a sharp inhale, he finally summoned his power, and Minjuri's wounds began to mend. A sense of relief washed over her features. She said, Thank you, Min. Ryu asked, Who did this to you? Who attacked you? She replied, And Sang Cheol, he's the one. Ryu was shocked and said, What? And a fiery anger ignited within Ryu. His rage was directed squarely at An Sang Cheol, and he asked, Where is that bastard? Ryu heard a voice from behind him say, Here I am. In a swift motion, Ryu Min turned toward the voice from behind. There stood the bodyguard, grinning like the quintessential villain. Ryu shouted, You fucking bastards! The bodyguard said, Wow, your choice of words is rather harsh, Prophet. Ryu's initially contorted expression subtly morphed, and his fury waned, replaced by a composed demeanor, and asked, Did you already know I was the Prophet? He replied, No. We only discovered it when we interrogated that girl, Minjuri, over there. Until a little while ago, we had no idea. Minjuri said, I'm sorry, Min. The pain was unbearable. Ryu harbored no resentment toward Minjuri, and with an ominous gaze, he fixed his sights on the bodyguard. He smiled and said, Don't glare at me like that. Do you have any idea how surprised I was to find out that the feeble prophet was Black Scythe? Who would have imagined that? Ryu said, Before I unleash my wrath, let's hear your explanation. Why did you attack Minjuri? The bodyguard added, Well, she seemed closely connected to you, so I thought I might obtain some valuable information if I surprised her with an attack. But the outcome exceeded my expectations, huh? To think that the prophet was the Black Scythe, the CEO will be thrilled when he hears about it. At that moment, Ryu unsheathed his death scythe and said, Can you ensure your survival long enough to deliver that message? He said, Whoa, slow down. Don't come any closer, or I'll detonate the bomb hidden inside Minjuri's body. Ryu inquired, What? In that moment, aged man No Gay stepped out from behind the bodyguard and said, Sorry, Black Scythe. And the bodyguard laughed. This guy lent me a hand. Ryu could already piece together the situation and asked, Did you truly implant a black seed within Minjuri's body? Aged man No Gay nodded without uttering a word. This simple act sent shockwaves through Ryu. In fact, when a dark mage reached level 40, they acquired a skill called Black Seed. This skill allowed them to randomly summon one of their demonic minions and plant it in the ground. And if this skill were used by planting it within a person's body, their body would erupt like a firework, and the summoned minion would burst forth. Then Ryu asked, You bastard, when did you reach level 40? Aged man No Gay replied, Did you think I was merely fooling around? I worked hard to become strong just like you, Black Scythe. Ryu said, You worthless scum. Remove the seed immediately. Without hesitation, he firmly declined Ryu's demand, causing Ryu's eyebrows to twitch. And Ryu inquired, Are you out of your mind? How dare you challenge me? Weren't you secretly in awe of me? He replied, Of course, to me, Black Scythe is like a god, but that's only if you manage to handle this situation successfully. If you're not flawless, there's no reason to continue following the Black Scythe, right? At that moment, Ryu felt like he'd been sucker punched, and Sang Cheol, Seo Arin, and even Heo Tai Sok, who had once revered him as a deity, had all betrayed him. The aftermath of such a betrayal from those he'd trusted ran deep. Then he asked the bodyguard, What do you want? He said, Do you see that precious girl of yours? How pity she can't even move. Ryu added, Get to the point, and promise me you won't harm Minjuri if I do what you ask. The bodyguard laughed and said, That's right, I promise. Then Ryu said, All right, what do you want then? Information about the next round? The location of the hidden piece? He said, I have no interest in such matters. You think you can deceive us and manipulate the CEO to your advantage? Unbelievable. And the bodyguard's grin abruptly turned into a stern expression and said, Take your own life. End it right here in front of us. Then we'll spare this girl. I know that this video is short, so I will try to upload the next part as soon as possible. And I hope everyone does not forget to like and subscribe and write a comment about what you expect Ryu to do in the next part.